to another of our top stories with Maxx Crosby becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history.
What do you feel overall?
I mean,
How you played, how the team played?
We lost the game. We didn't play good enough to win, so just got to watch the film.
Yes. Roger Goodell is heading to this.
Boise State.
I'm happy for Ashton. He came on our show. He was awesome, D-Butt, and he put Boise State on his back.
Geno Smith giving it to the Seahawks fans in his first game as a Raider preseason, but he's back in Seattle.
Down.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Raiders have only dug themselves deeper into the hole of rebuilding with this past offseason and current start to this year. The Las Vegas Raiders obviously made big moves. They brought in Geno, they brought in Pete Carroll, they signed some free agents, Ashton Jeanty, re-signed Maxx Crosby. But all of these moves have not pushed the needle in the NFL for the Raiders to be a successful playoff team. And I think we all kind of saw this coming, except for the Raiders. I think the Raiders have actually really hurt their chances at a full and complete rebuild with the moves that they made this offseason. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to dig through their offseason moves. We're going to explain why the Raiders have only moved back in time and will not be a successful NFL team in this 2025 season, and why they really should hit the panic button now and blow this up now while they have some assets and some time. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about what I would do if I was the Raiders GM to get this ship on track and get this show on the road. Make sure you guys like, make sure you guys subscribe. We're back at it. Gabe Sayers believer, and this is why the Raiders are terrible. Ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the offseason. And I'm going to brush past the Maxx Crosby re-signing. Obviously, that's great. That's your star player. Geno Smith being brought in. I think it's an overpay, but at the end of the day, Geno Smith is a solid quarterback. He's not going to win you a ring, but he'll bring you stability. Pete Carroll's head coach is not my favorite move. I think it actually is a little bit of putting a ceiling on yourself, head coach wise. But at the end of the day, he is a good Super Bowl winning head coach. Let's talk about some of the nitty gritty moves over this offseason. Stuff that really builds the stability of your roster. We're going to start with Alex Cappa signing with the Raiders. Now listen, I don't think Alex Cappa is a terrible guard. But with this being really the main offensive line move that they made this offseason, it's simply just not enough. It's truly just not enough. Alex Cappa is not a big enough star guard to really rectify that being your only offensive line move this entire offseason, especially the fact that you need 5 offensive linemen. No duh, you know? So Alex Cappa was not a needle mover and honestly has struggled this season. His PFF grades are not great, and that whole entire Raiders offensive line was getting killed in the Commanders game. They did retain some decent players like Adam Butler. Malcolm Koonce came back on a 1-year deal. Isaiah Pola-Mao got a 2-year extension. And these are all solid moves, but again, none of these are major needle moving plays. They needed some decent signings, at least somebody young, or bring in some really strong vets, and they just didn't do that. Eric Stokes at corner is an upside kind of move for the secondary room, but in an already weak secondary, there is minimal mentorship there for Eric Stokes, who really at this point in his career truly needs something like that. Jeremy Chin at safety seemed like it was going to be a big move, the 2-year, $18 million deal from Jeremy Chin, but that's honestly looking like a little bit of an overpay. Jeremy Chin has not been terrible for the first few games through the season, but not exactly earning that $9 million a year payday so far, which is a decent chunk of change for safeties in the NFL because safeties are typically paid a lot less because of how many safeties there are. Moving the needle. They also brought in guys like veteran Devin White, who's been okay so far, Jermaine Pratt, who's been okay so far, that, you know, they definitely put in some work into this linebacker room. But then, you know, trading like a 5th round pick for Kenny Pickett just doesn't, I don't understand the purpose of that move if I'm the Raiders, because you already have your veteran and Geno Smith. Don't you want somebody young there to be taking that QB2 spot to learn from Geno? Don't you want to start trying to develop your next quarterback at this point? Because again, you can't guarantee you're going to get a high value quarterback in the draft, especially if you're trying to put this win now roster together. Your draft pick probably isn't going to be great. I don't think it's going to be terrible, but I don't think it's going to be great. So you're going to be stuck around that 10 spot. So why not try to develop a young player? Why not see if you could have some rookie sit behind Geno? You never know. You never know what he's got. So wasting a draft capital on Kenny Pickett makes no sense to me. Other signings, I mean, they brought in Philip Dorsett, and he hasn't touched any football. But you know what? The one signing I will say that I really liked, and something that I've actually been personally calling for, is signing Jamal Adams and moving him to linebacker. That has been a very successful move for them and has helped kind of push this linebacker room from very meh to honestly decent. Jamal Adams, Devin White, Jermaine Pratt, Landon Roberts isn't the worst linebacker room in the NFL, but it's barely cracking mediocrity, and that's with Jamal Adams honestly having a very strong start of his season. None of these offseason moves are addressing the major issues that the Raiders had, and the Raiders' issues are in the trenches. Besides from Maxx Crosby, there is no major stars on either side of the line. And I know that Wilkins got cut and he was supposed to be a big star for the Raiders, but I also think they completely mishandled that situation. There's no way you invest that much money in Christian Wilkins to then just cut him over kissing a teammate. I'm not even going to begin to get into that. At the end of the day, they needed a more suitable replacement that they did not get for the defensive line, and the offensive line just did not really get addressed. Alex Kappa and Caleb Rogers, a third-round pick from Texas Tech, isn't going to fix this offensive line issue. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson is a very solid player, but then again, outside of that, this Raiders line is extremely weak. Listen, I can't blame them for taking Ashton Jeanty in the draft where they did. Ashton Jeanty is a must-get player. I think he will be a generational running back in the NFL. But you invested such crazy value with such an early pick in picking Ashton Jeanty, but you didn't give him an adequate offensive line to run behind. So now he's taking unnecessary hits, unnecessary wear and tear, and running backs don't last forever, and you're just sending him out to the wolves with this poor offensive line when Ashton Jeanty's honestly to me looked good for how poor his offensive line is. To invest your number 6 overall pick into something, I would think that you'd bring him into a situation that was slightly prepared to have him, in my opinion. The offseason, they just were missing, in my opinion. A lot of veterans, not enough young players, in my opinion, and then just a severe lack of stars. There was nothing special out of this offensive class and defensive class for free agents, and they just didn't bring anything big home. Part of the reason I think this Raiders offensive line is struggling as well is with Pete Carroll's son being the coach. I don't think he's a very good offensive line coach, obviously, because this line does have some decent talent on it, but they're still just playing terribly. Colton Miller is obviously by far your best offensive lineman here, but the issue with Colton Miller is he's 29 years old. And yes, some offensive linemen can last a long time, but guys like Trent Williams, who are already now starting to fall off, all these offensive linemen can't last forever, frankly. Jordan Meredith is 27. Dylan Parham's 26. These guys are, middle of the pack age. They're probably plateauing at this point in their career and probably not getting much better. I would hope that Dylan Parham can get a little better though, because he has been atrocious to start this season. Your real hope for youth on this line is DJ Glaze, Jackson Powers-Johnson, and that third-round pick that we were talking about. And besides that, this line just completely lacks youth on it. Alex Kappa is 30 years old, and I don't see a ton of upside on this offensive line right now, which is why I would have liked to see it addressed a lot more throughout the draft and throughout, frankly, the free agency process. I don't think only bringing one offensive lineman into this group is sufficient or anywhere near enough, frankly. Obviously, this offensive line needs to reshuffle, but I think part of that reshuffle starts with reshuffling a new offensive line coach internally. And now, what would I do if I was the Raiders GM? Well, don't worry, I got the answers because I should be an NFL GM, but we're not ready for that conversation. I frankly think we need to get the team younger. We really, really need to emphasize how do we make this team younger. There's only 16 players on this roster under the age of 25, and that's very alarming to me, in my opinion, because it shows a low retention of previous draft classes. Obviously, there are some great young players. Ashton Jeanty, Brock Bowers are going to be pillars of this offense for a long time to come, as long as they can retain them. And there's some fun question marks like Jack Beck, JPJ, Dante Thornton Jr., even Caleb Rogers, and, guys like Trey Tucker. I think there's a lot of solid pieces here young wise, but there's just not enough. There is not enough youth on this Raiders team, especially defensively. I don't see a lot of young defensive players on this Raiders team that really jump out to me as guys that you're going to be able to build around and have positions plugged and filled for a decently cheap price. Outside of JJ Pegs, I don't really love a lot of these young players for the Raiders, to be honest. So I think that's your number one priority, is you need to send out these young players, especially if the season continues to be unsuccessful like it has been so far. You need to send out these young players and you need to see what they got, because you need to fully talent evaluate where you're at and what needs to happen going forward. And what, in my opinion, happens going forward is you need to bring in a boatload of young players through free agency, through the draft. See who you can develop and who could become future starters on this team, and then just keep it pushing. And then you can fill in free agents from there. But with how many of the Raiders roster is filled out with older players that are either plateauing or going to start hitting a sunset of their career, you need to see what these young guys got now before it's frankly too late and before they need a new contract and you don't know whether you should give them a contract or not because they're unproven. All of these players should be given an opportunity to prove their skill set on this Raiders team. Obviously, I should be the GM, and I should be the one making these decisions, but, you know, listen, give me a couple years, guys, and I'll be GM of a team. Y'all gotta let me cook. And I'm telling y'all, this Madden franchise series we're gonna do one day is also gonna absolutely cook, because I'm a dog of a GM. And the new face cam that's currently ordered and on the way, also going to make the videos even more banger. So stay tuned for that new face cam. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up today for me. I really enjoyed actually kind of making a change of pace type video. If you guys enjoy this kind of video, please let me know. I'd love to do more deep dives and discussions onto different NFL teams and kind of break into the nitty gritty of some of the NFL teams. I think it's more fun to talk about different parts of NFL teams than just, you know, going on to a mainstream team and talking about a mainstream issue or a mainstream just player on their team. I like to kind of break these down a little bit more and kind of break down to these different position groups on why I think teams are truly struggling. So if you guys want to see more of these, please let me know. If you guys have any video ideas you want to see, let me know. You know, bring back forgotten quarterbacks. I'll just let me know and I'm going to get her done, because, you know, we are the believers and we are a team that we got to work together and work extra hard. So please share this out, get this video out there. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you guys all again very soon.